Welcome to Agile Conversations. That's the first time I'm saying that because we just officially rebranded. If you were here last time or watched the video with JJ, that was something that we were talking about. I did a poll to the audience, and that's what we came up with. Because my focus here, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the mission that I'm kind of MVPing, so to speak, in just a moment with my slides. But I'm here to start a conversation with people who have something to say and give a platform to their voice, because we all have stories to share, especially in this challenging Agile environment that we work in. So I'm going to share a couple of slides with you, and then we'll get started with our conversation. All right, so like I said, the new mission statement of this biweekly meetup is an MVP at this point, but I want to welcome you all to Agile Conversations. My mission is to share stories about overcoming Agile career obstacles and build a community of professionals to support others in beginning and, most importantly, remaining on their Agile journey. So you'll see this evolve as the weeks go on, and I welcome feedback. But if you don't know me, my name is Patty. You probably have seen me on LinkedIn, and that's how you got here. But I'm the founder of Agile Mindset Consulting. I am passionate about Scrum Masters, and that's my mission here, to support Scrum Masters and all the folks that they influence. So I do some career coaching, I do cohort-based training, and I also go into companies and do workshops and speaking to help them with their Agile journey. So our backlog for tonight, we're kind of doing the welcome and introduction piece at the moment. I want to announce a couple of upcoming events. So in 2 weeks, we will have Iffy with us. I don't know if he's here tonight, but if you're not familiar with him on LinkedIn, he's the one that holds up the whiteboards with the supporting quotes that job seekers really need to hear sometimes. So we're going to talk about his mission there, and of course, LinkedIn. 2 weeks from that, my good friend Emily Ford is going to be coming to talk with me about design thinking and using that in change management. So more information to come about these two topics specifically, but just to give you a heads up. And of course, the person that we're here to see today, Antoni, we're going to get started with our fireside chat. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can do that. All right, here we go. So, Antoni, are you ready?
I was born ready.
I know. And when we logged on, that's the first thing you said to me. And I'm like, I love it. I love it. All right. Well, I've already said your name. We probably all know it, but you all know how I start this. Tell us your name, where you're located, which we all know already. And tell us a little bit about your current role. What are you currently doing in your Agile career?
So again, my name is Antoni Tzavelas. I reside here in Toronto, Canada, and I am a Scrum Master and Agile and Devops coach for a financial institution here in Canada. And yeah, I mean, part of what I do every day, I'm a Scrum Master for a couple of Scrum teams, one technical, one non-technical. Most people didn't know that. Everyone thinks that I work with technical teams, but I'm actually itching to start doing that. As you can see, I also am heavily involved in DevOps coaching, which, you know, is actually part of my past, and bringing that back to coaching is a big part of what it is that I do and what it is that I love. I love to show people, guide them, mentor them, and of course, coach them in technical trainings, in technical principles, and really give people a better sense of how to work better and do the things that they do and help them, I guess, create the environment that they seek to look for, and just have them do what they do best in an environment that gives them everything that they need.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing that. I am so looking forward to our conversation today about your career journey. And one of the reasons is, of course, because you started out in the fashion business.
I did.
But you didn't, like me, you did not start out in software development. You didn't start out with a computer science degree. So you started out as non-technical.
Yep. I was in the fashion biz for probably a decade. And my goals were very lofty. I used to tell people I'm going to be the next Calvin Klein. And I did my very first fashion show when I was 17 years old. I worked in tailor shops. I did couturier garments, and have done a lot of outfits for some pretty big performers from Canada. So it was a really fun time. And yeah, I did it for quite a while. And in 1999, that was when I met my now wife. Yes, we've been together for 24 years. Imagine that. And we decided, us crazy kids, we're going to start a fashion label. And that's what we did. So we combined the knowledge that I had with creating garments and being able to source fabrics. And back then I knew how to sew too. So my wife, Laura had a background in marketing, in fashion marketing. So she knew all the ins and outs of marketing and all the right people to talk to. And we grew this business, and it was a lot of fun. We grew it to approximately 40 boutiques across North America, and we even had some in Australia. So it was really, really awesome until I believe it was 2004 when the fashion industry imploded here in Canada. And this was because there was free trade from China, and making something in China cost 1/10 of the price of what it costs here. And this caused a lot of the factories, a lot of the fabric mills, notion suppliers, all to shut down. And because we were so proud to be made in Canada, we refused to go overseas and make our clothes there. So that's where my career journey turned. Some people could say for the better, and some people could say for the worse. At the time, it was, for me, an eye-opening moment. And, as I was sharing with you a lot earlier, Patty, I got to a point where me and Laura and my son, we were living with $30,000 a year. This was our annual income. And this was probably poverty level. And there came a point in time where I was digging through the couch for change to get coffee and cigarettes. And I had that light bulb moment. Why am I doing this to myself and to my family? Something needs to change. And that's when, literally the next day, it changed. Should I go on, Patty?
Well, there's so much that I want to kind of stop you and ask you about.
Sure.
First of all, you said how many boutiques?
40.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. I'm assuming you just sewed some clothes and you put them on the runway, which I mean is a big deal to begin with, right? But 40 boutiques, I can't imagine running that many. Having one business is enough.
And ironically, I didn't realize that I was a project manager at the time, which was kind of hilarious because, full circle.
Right. And that, I mean, that's an excellent segue. Yeah, accidental project manager. That is
For
a great
sure.
segue to, this is something that I posted today on LinkedIn about reframing your skill set, right? Because you see yourself as somebody that's creating garments. You sell them in a boutique. Your passion is fashion. But when you think about running a business, how much is involved and how scrappy do you have to be? Because you can't lean on anybody. You can't pass the buck. And I say this because I've been there. And in some cases, I'm still there, right? Because I'm a solopreneur. You can't pass the buck.
No.
If you need somebody to do bookkeeping, you got to figure it out. If you need somebody to, in my case, we needed software for our business. That's how I got into software. There was nobody else. I had to figure it out because we needed it.
Yeah, this is where relationship management came in really handy. And that's, people ask, how I became such a people person. And this was because I exercised it all the time. If you want to get into a boutique, somebody's not going to buy your clothes just because of your name. Somebody's going to also buy your clothes because they like you. They like doing business with you. You're a nice guy, Antoni. I'm going to do business with you. I remember one time I went out to Portland, Oregon, and I was selling to a boutique out there and never sold to the person before. And he went to look at my stuff and he's like, Antoni, honestly, my customer is not this. And I was deflated because this guy, he had the boutique I wanted to be in. Me and Laura, we were like counting on this and it didn't happen. And I was like, all right, well, if you're not going to buy anything, let's go for dinner. He's like, okay. So we ended up going for dinner. But what I didn't expect was that he ended up calling another boutique, a guy that he knew as down the street. And he said, hey, this guy, he's your customer. They have what it is that you need. And I had food poisoning that night, unfortunately, from, oysters, those damn oysters. And I went to see this shop owner the next day, and he saw that I was in some real pain. And he's like, don't worry, Antoni, just have a seat outside, grab a coffee. We're going to take a look at the samples. Sure enough, he bought $5,000 worth of merchandise from me on the spot. And it was all because I made a relationship with that other person. And since then, I was really big on relationship management. And it happens anywhere and everywhere. And you'll never know when things might go in your favor because of it.
Right. So when we talk about that evil word networking, relationship building, I mean, JJ and I talked about that last week. We're talking about this now. It is so critical.
Yeah.
That you build relationships with people with no intention, number one. But then they like you. And that's such a weird word to use because it's not about trying to make people like you. It's when you show your authentic self, people are attracted to it. So let me clarify that. But whenever I worked with, for my business, I worked with somebody on my brand, and she always said to me, your customer has to know, like, and trust you. And I've never forgotten that. because people buy from who they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
So how did you, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun here, but um, maybe we'll pause that. But I do want to know, when we talk about all the different pieces of your career, like, how have you collected all these skills to ultimately be the successful Scrum Master and coach that you are today? So let's, as they say in corporate America, put a pin in it. And I don't know if they say that in Canada.
They actually do.
Oh, okay. So it's everywhere. Let's put a pin in that one, but like, keep that in the back of your mind. So like, what you learned there, we're going to eventually circle back. There's another one, to how that unknowingly helped you today. So let's go to your next career, right? Or your next pivot. Where did you go after, like, your business basically was pulled out from underneath you?
Yeah. So when I had that light bulb moment that I was sharing earlier, literally the next day, a neighbor came to my loft and said, Antoni, I'm making so much money in tech. It's ridiculous. I need a database administrator. Do you know of a database administrator? And at the time I was like, I don't know anyone in tech really. And so I pulled a Richard Branson. I was like, give me a week, I'll figure it out. So that's what I did. And I furiously went to my computer, looking across all torrent sites to find videos on databases. What do I do? How do I do it? All I could find were ebooks. And back then, I didn't know anything about tables, joins, keys, anything like that. So I was so frustrated that I couldn't learn this skill that I needed to get me out of the spot that I was. So I turned to my wife. I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going back to school. She's like, what the hell are you talking about? You don't have any money. I was like, I'll find some money. I was like, I'm not living like this anymore. I refuse to live like this. I refuse to let my family go through this. So I went to a college that was near me. They had a database administrator course because, you know, back then I was tunnel vision. I was like, database administrator, make lots of money. So that was my mission. And I found a school and they're like, oh, well, you know, you passed the entrance exam and it seems like you're good for a loan from the government so that you can come to the school. I was like, great. When do I start? Not realizing that I had just took out a $20,000 loan in order to go to school. So, but there I was back in school and I was on a mission, database administrator, make lots of money. So that's what I did. And I learned all about Linux and Unix and databases from Oracle to SQL Server. And yeah, I was all skilled up. But at the same time, I started to use that relationship management tool that I learned back in fashion. And that ended up getting me working with the teacher. So now I was assisting the teacher to prepare computers every time there was a new class. So I'd reimage the computers overnight. Teacher wouldn't have to worry about it. And eventually I got really good at it to the point where they were like, we need a network administrator for the school. Would you be interested? I was like, hells yes, of course. So I took that on too. And then I realized that it was a lot. So I was studying during the day. I was doing network administration in the afternoon and evenings, and I would go home and study. Those were my days. And then it got to the point where I they had hired a network administrator full time. So they were like, sorry, Antoni, we can't do this. I was like, all right, let's make lemonade. So I immediately, the school was in a mall. I immediately left the school and went to the nearest Best Buy. And I walked in with my resume. I was like, I would like a job at Geek Squad. Well, what kind of credentials do you have? Take a look. And this guy was impressed. He's like, wow, Antoni, when can you start? I was like, when do you need me to start? 2 days. Great. Get me a uniform and I'll be there. So there I was, working at Geek Squad in the evening, doing school during the day, and then studying late at night. So when finally, when I finished school, 6 months later, I landed my first job with Citigroup as a Unix administrator. Not as a database administrator, but I was like, you know what? This is paying $60,000 a year, and that's $30,000 more than what we were bringing in. And we're still bringing in $30,000 on top of that. So winning, hashtag winning. And literally, I'll never forget this. It was a month into that job, and I called up my wife. I said, Laura, I feel like I'm winning the lottery every 2 weeks. They're paying me all this money to do what I love to do. This is amazing. She's like, Antoni, you're just doing your job. But back then it was, you know, I was looking at it from a point of view where I had nothing. And now I had money in the bank where I didn't have to starve and my family didn't have to starve. And from that point on, I promised myself and I promised my family that we would never go through that ever again.
Amazing. And if you dropped the mic there, it's almost like that's enough, right? But I know there's more to the story.
So much more.
But
So
I just want to say, I do want to be mindful of our time. It's almost like we need like 2 or 3 hours, right? Kind of like JJ last time. The first thing, like when you started telling that portion of your story, the first thing I thought of was entrepreneurial. Because when you're an entrepreneur, like I mentioned before, you have to pick yourself up by your bootstraps. You're so used to doing that you're willing to go and do it.
yeah.
And you don't let fear stop you because you've had to step up, right?
Sure.
There's nobody to fall back on. So that's part of who you are. So that's why you said, yeah, of course I can do this. And then you you taught yourself how to do it, meaning the database. So I recognize that right away because I've been in those positions too. So I know that, I know in some of our conversations, you talked about being laid off.
Oh yeah.
Have we gotten there yet? Because I know that you have 4 in your story.
Yeah.
And I know that's on people's minds today. So are we there yet? Are you ready to tell us about that?
Oh yeah. So 2.5 years into my Unix administrator life, I got laid off. And it wasn't because they were downsizing, it was because Citigroup was just closing their offices. And they're like, you need to move to Texas. And so I said to Laura, I was like, hey, you want to move to Texas? She's like, hells no. I was like, okay. I just, wanted to cover my bases. I figured I'd ask. So I went back to work. I'm like, hey, I'm not moving to Texas with you. I'm sorry. He said, well, we're going to have to package you out. It's like, okay. So there it was, my first layoff. Make a long story short, I ended up starting my own business, doing tech work for small businesses, mostly in cloud, back when cloud was still in its infancy. eventually a friend of mine from Citigroup had a job at this other company, and he's like, Anthony, you need to come and work with me. I was like, cool, let's do it. So I went to work with him, and I was there for approximately a year and a half. And because I was the last one hired, guess who was the last one to, or sorry, I was the last one, first one to go. So that was my second layoff. And I remember that layoff like it was yesterday. I was walked out of the building with whatever it was that I could hold, and I was in tears. I was like, how could this happen to me again, a second time? And what I realized over time, after doing interviews shortly after that, is that my skills were antiquated. I didn't have up-to-date skills. And this was a big problem for me. And so Laura turns to me and she says, do you want to go back to work for the bank? Because that's where you can get a job. I was like, no, I don't want to do it. She's like, well, then you need to figure it out. So that's when I decided to go cloud. And AWS was in its infancy. It was 5 years in. It was the only cloud in the market. And I jumped on it and I learned it and did enough networking on LinkedIn so that I could get my next job as a solutions architect. Make a long story short, 6 months later, they laid me off because they had no clue how to sell cloud in a brand new market. So then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened to me a third time. What the hell? And that's when I said, okay, enough is enough. I need to upskill to a point where I can not only get a job, but if I do get laid off 6 months later, I will be able to go anywhere else. And so that's when I went out to grab some AWS certifications. And after getting 2, bam, landed my first job in cloud. And it was a matter of spending 2 months. I was not bringing in any money at the time. And the first time I actually took my AWS exam, I failed. And I was so depressed. I was like, I can't do this. I felt like I was letting my family down. And so that's when I said to myself, when I pass this exam, actually I passed 2 exams on the same week because I studied so much. I'm going to get myself a tattoo to remind myself that I need to continuously learn. A lot of people have seen this tattoo, but it is my AWS tattoo. It's the old school version, but it's a constant reminder to upskill. And over time, that upskilling served me very well, because my 4th layoff allowed me to teach what I know, allowed me to become a trainer. But I mean, getting up to that, I was learning so much to the point where people were asking me if I was getting enough sleep because I had so many certifications. At my high point, I had about 10 cloud certifications in both AWS and Google Cloud. And thanks to LinkedIn, I didn't have to do any job searching. I was literally getting 10 messages a day from recruiters, a day.
Yep.
Because of upskilling.
Yep.
But I didn't want that to get to my head. I needed to stay focused and I needed to stay on point, because in the back of my mind, there it was, me digging through that couch for change. And I refused to go back to that. And I refused to be laid off and just kicking it at home with no skill sets to fall back on.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, because I've worked in companies where folks have been there for, 10, 15 years. They have no desire to upskill. Or, when we talk about cross-functional teams, they're like, no, I'm going to stay in my lane. This is my silo. This is the specific task that I do. And anytime I hear that, it always concerns me, because I'm like, okay, so if you were to be put back out on the job market right now, do you think somebody would hire you? And I mean, you were faced with that, right? So it's not like, I always tell people I'm psychic, but like, because it's the truth. If you don't keep up with technology, right, it's quickly changing faster than we can keep up. But if you don't try to keep up, you're going to find yourself without a job. And what do you do?
Yeah.
If
And,
you are not up to speed with the rest of the world, because you've just been kind of safe in your comfort zone.
and
So
for those who don't know, I went from fashion to Unix admin when I was 30. When I got into cloud, I was 40. There's no excuse. Age is just a number. A lot of people say that there's ageism out there. Sure, there's ageism, but if you're good at what it is that you do, nobody's going to turn you down. I don't care if you're a woman. When I see a smart woman on my team, I'm like, hell's yes, let's do this. Because I know that shit's going to get done. It's not going to be, a slack race to the finish. So, yeah, it's amazing what can happen if you really just put your mind to it and you show people that you're good at what it is that you do. There was one quote from, I forget who it was from, but they said, if you're good at what you do and you love what you're doing, you're going to make a lot of money. Actually, you know who said that?
I was going to say, Jesus.
Donald Trump.
Oh,
I know.
okay. Well, we don't have to go there, but I would say, they always not to bring religion, right? Because religion and politics, oh gosh, here we go, right?
But I must say that quote got me through my year of studying. I actually had that stuck to my computer screen, because I was just thinking about, how am I going to get out of this? And, I need to stay on course, and I'm going to be the best freaking DBA that anyone has ever seen. I didn't become a DBA, but I was pretty good at what I did. And so that was the focus. It was always the focus, is to get out of this with enough money where I didn't have to worry. And a lot of people, they get into tech because of the money. And sure, that is awesome. But it is a means to an end. And this is where I started to dabble in other areas. I started to dabble in training. And I really, really loved it. I started to dabble in coaching. I love that too. And then eventually I found the role or the accountability of a Scrum Master, and I fell in love. I woke up every morning excited. I couldn't wait until Monday, because I was like, I get to go work with my team. This is freaking awesome. I love doing this. And so, I really want to invite others to not just stay in your lane, but explore what it is that you love to do. Even if it means you're only doing it on the side. Because if you do find out that you love something that you're doing and it's a side gig, you're going to make it your full-time gig, and you're going to want to make it your full-time gig. So I say explore your options.
So before we open the questions to the audience, because I'm sure they've got so many, where do you think this drive comes from? And I sort of asked you this, in our prior Zoom conversations that we've had, where does this motivation come from?
It's a really great question. And I've had, picking change from my couch for sure. But it's more of because I've done this so many times, I started to break down what is it that drove me. And for me, it was, I never wanted to be broke ever again. And along the journey, I tricked myself into being a continuous learner, only to realize that it's what drove me to where I am. And now I can't stop. My wife told me that you, Antoni, are addicted to learning. That's what she said to me.
Yeah.
I think we've discussed this before. Last year, I took 12 Agile certification courses. That's like once a month. And I still couldn't get enough. And when I went through the first month or two of this year, I couldn't do it. I was getting the itch. I was like, I need to learn something. If you're not learning enough from your current job, then you need to get out there and start learning from somewhere else, from some other people. And that was combined with positivity was my drive. I always talk about positivity and how it drives other people. It inspires other people. I've had my executives ask me, Antoni, how do you do it? How are you always so freaking positive? And I said, well, I woke up this morning. Things could always be worse. And when I think back to, I could be broke. I could have no roof over my head. I could have no food on the table. I think about all the blessings that I've been given. And that's why I always love to give back, because I want to see others succeed too. Because when I'm succeeding and others are succeeding, man, it's a freaking party.
Yeah. And that's a growth mindset right there. It is, there's two, and I'm thinking specifically in business, but I think this is just in life in general. There are people that think, if I give and other people succeed, that's less for me. But the way I've come to look at it is, if I give and you are successful and I'm successful, that's abundance.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah. I mean, changing from that scarcity mindset to a growth mindset, especially if you're helping someone else. I mean, if somebody falls down and you help them up, they're going to remember you, right? And that's what we're here for. Eventually, we're all on this planet to do good. We're all on this planet because we want to help each other. In the end, it's not necessarily about the money. It's about helping people. And helping people is in our DNA. Helping people makes us happy. And happy is the only way to be in my eyes.
You are definitely one of the most positive, happy, smiling people that I've ever met. And I know people say that about me. Right? When Deepali was on here like a month ago, she said that about me. And it's not that we have a perfect life or we never get upset or, difficult things don't happen. It's just, how do you respond to it? So what is it that you put out in the world will determine what the response is that you get back. So you have a choice.
You always have a choice. It doesn't matter what situation you are in. You always have a choice. And I would invite everyone on this call that when you're always, I wouldn't say always, but when you are put in difficult or challenging situations, look at the positive choices that you have. Look at the positive choices that you can make. And sure, they could be really crappy in the short term, but we have to look at the long-term game, right? I mean, I spent a whole year studying, $20,000 and you can get the shit for free now. So, there's always that upside. There's always that upside in any situation. I don't care what it is. There's always an upside. So I challenge everyone. I invite everyone to look at those positives whenever you are challenged.
Excellent. Well, we could probably end right there, but we're not going to. We're going to give people an opportunity to ask you some questions.
Bring it on.
So what
I'm
do
an
you
open book.
right? What do you folks have on your mind? Why don't we just raise your hand, put the reaction button, and I'll call on people and go ahead and unmute. And Antoni, if you see the hand before I do, let me know.
Sure. Wilfredo.
Hey, Antoni, Patty, how are you doing? I have a question. First of all, I like to hear the kind of your sense of sufficiency is the one that motivates you, which is enough, which is different from enough. No, I mean the feeling of I have sufficient life that I can leave it. I have sufficient space that I can share it. That's a pretty good motivation, I will say. My question is, coming from the business side of the industry, from the business side, why is the business sometimes so reluctant to accept Scrum when they have been doing Scrum, even without naming it that so? They have been doing Scrum always. From the time that you start your business plan and you're actually going for all the tryouts, the follow-ups, and everything, your quarter business reviews, they have been doing Scrum without naming it. Why are they so reluctant to accept it sometimes?
One word: power. They don't have control over it. They have to work within the guidelines of Scrum. And because they don't have the power to be able to control the outcome, they're reluctant.
So those
especially if somebody tells you, we're going to do this, and it doesn't matter what you think. This is what we're going to do. Oh, no, you can't do that because I don't know what it is. So therefore, it's a no-go. And, you know, tying into power is fear. And because executives and, you know, big organizations, they're scared to lose that power. They're like, oh my God, my whole company is going to fall apart because they don't have a vision of what a future might look like where people can actually think for themselves.
So actually, the two red flags are self-sufficient teams and iterations. We're going to try forward and then we're going to try it again. But isn't it a misunderstanding from the business leadership?
It's absolutely education. Absolutely.
Thank you.
The question is, will somebody give you their ear if you're willing to educate them? And that's where that growth mindset comes in. Thanks for the question, Wilfredo.
Great answer. I know that if we kind of scroll back in the chat, Hussein had, and this is a really popular question, experience or certification. And I wanted to ask you that myself, because, you know, in talking about getting these Google Cloud certifications, all of a sudden you had a job. But you get a Scrum Master certification, you don't all of a sudden have a job. So is there a discrepant, like, is there a difference between what you experience with those other certifications versus Scrum, Agile, et cetera, certifications? And what are your thoughts about, do we,
Fantastic.
do
Fantastic
we, like, let me just
I
start
know where
there.
you're going. I know where you're going. And let me tell you, this was a huge experiment for me. Last year, taking all those certification courses was a huge experiment. Why? Is because in cloud, I don't know if some of you have seen my post from yesterday. I took a 4-hour exam, a beta exam, and it literally crippled my mind because it was so hard. It was so technical. And in order to get to that level of mastery, you need to study and study and study for like at least a couple months, at least, and be able to spend another month or two being able to execute that. And that was the great thing about me getting all these cloud certifications, is because I was able to learn and I was able to apply. So getting into the Agile domain, I was like, oh, hey, I can do exactly the same thing. So I'm going to take all these certification courses and they're going to teach me exactly what I need to know. And I'm going to fast track my career just like that. And I was devastatingly wrong. Because although they teach you the basics, it's hard for someone to teach you about what's going to happen when people get involved. When people get involved, it's a whole different ballgame. When you're dealing with ones and zeros, you know exactly what's going to happen most of the time. But when you are dealing with people, it could be the same problem, but on a different day. One day, guy had an amazing breakfast. The next day, he had a fight with his wife. It's going to be different. Same scenario. But when you're dealing with people problems are so much harder. And this is where, when I started being a Scrum Master, I realized that I wouldn't have been able to do the best job that I could have if I didn't have my coaching skills. And this is where my eyes lit up. This is where I realized, oh my God, these people are are teaching me things that just scratch the surface, but I mean, it doesn't really give me what I need. And that's when I had to accept the fact that I had to just go through the process. I had to put my time in. And being a Scrum Master, being a coach, that's what it taught me, is that I just have to go through it. I have to deal with more teams. I have to deal with the chaos in order for me to better understand what it is that I do, and in order to build my skill set. Because the more chaotic the environment that you're in, and it sounds a little sadistic, some would say, but the better you become, because you get to understand what is making people tick and what are the problems that they run into, and coming at it from a human aspect, as opposed to, oh, they just don't want to do it, they're just lazy. No, well, it's not just that. Like, let's go behind the scenes. Let's have a conversation. Is it, personal? Is it the team? Is it executives? It could be anything. But you don't know until you have that conversation. And until you've had those conversations, those agile conversations. See what I did there?
Nice plug.
You don't know. And so certifications are great, and I would recommend them when you are in that specific situation. For instance, I started doing a little bit of systems coaching. So I was like, you know what, this is really tough for me, like really getting into it. I had to change my mindset a little bit, because now you're coaching a big system. You're coaching an organization, as opposed to coaching individuals, coaching teams. So to wrap my head around that, I was having difficulties. And so I wanted to understand more on that. So that's when I signed up for systems coaching certification class, to see, okay, are they going to teach me any more? Are they going to give me some tools that I could use to better my skill set? So when it comes to certifications versus experience, hands down, it's always experience. And unfortunately, the path, the way that I did it in a technical manner, doesn't work in an agile manner. I hope that answers your question, Hussein.
That was a great answer. And I know we don't have time to like dig into technical versus non-technical. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. And I know, Marsha, you brought that up. I'm going to offer one more question. Ravinder, you've been patiently waiting with your hand up. So let's have you as the final question. And then Antoni, you can tell us, of course, we know how to reach you. Invite us to reach out to you if we have more questions. Let's put it that way. So Ravinder, if you could ask your question, we'll end the night with you.
Hi, Antoni, and thank you for this information that you've provided. It's very inspiring, and I could almost like relate to your story, because I've also been coming from IT background with like a lot of movement from one project to the other. But what kept you moving in terms of like keep going with your certs, or keeping you kind of float in terms of doing what you're doing? Because I've had my challenges in my career, and I just wanted to kind of know what kept you going to know that, okay, you're going to be doing this, and you're doing this for a reason, because I have a reason also of helping people, but at the same time, I've had challenges where I've been questioned about my skills. So just want to know, like, what's your take on?
What's the context, Ravinder?
I mean, just in terms of like the career shift, because like you were talking about moving from you doing the DBA and then going into your coaching, cycle of you thought that, okay, this would be something that you would want to move into, and this would be a right move for you based on, your life cycle of what you've done, right? So I just wanted to know what kept you keep doing what you did, and
So to give you the short answer, I went from fashion to Unix admin because I needed money. I went from admin to cloud because I wanted to stay current. I went from cloud to trainer because I was doing so much training myself, and I loved it so much. I wanted to teach others. Then I went from training to coaching because I saw coaching in the wild and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And then
okay.
when I went back to training, because I had another layoff there, I went into another business, creating my own certification prep courses. And from there, when COVID started to die down, I wanted to get back into the industry, but I didn't want to code anymore. I didn't want to be an engineer, and I didn't want to be an architect. I wanted to deal more with people. So I was like, how can I take my technical skill set and apply it to people? That's when I came across the Scrum Master role, and I was like, there's no way that this is a role. This is like, it was made for me. Somebody made it for me. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
And so when you start to explore those opportunities, so you see something in your current role or in previous roles that you really love, you should go for it. You should try it out. See if it makes you happy.
Yeah, because that's my thing too. Like I've kind of kind of came in that area where I feel like Scrum and Agile is something that I want to go into, and coaching is something that I want to go into and be able to help people like myself, where I was not able to do certain things in my cycle. I hopefully be able to give that back to the people and help them out with their challenges so that they don't make those mistakes, which maybe if I did, I could be able to help them out with. So just wanted to kind of know your sort of idea of how it helped you keep moving.
Well, the thing is, you can't help others if you can't help yourself. So I would highly invite you to help yourself by continuously learning so that you can share your knowledge to others, and you can help others through the knowledge of coaching and through the knowledge of being a Scrum Master.
Yeah, no, definitely I will, because this is quite an inspiring story of yours, and thank you for this. Thank you.
Welcome.
So now you see why we had to have him on here. It's an incredible story. Well, thank you so much, Antoni, for coming. And of course, we've had many conversations before, but sharing your journey with a live audience, we greatly appreciate it. So as I mentioned to everybody, this is being recorded. I'll email it out to everybody on Monday, so you'll get to watch this back. And those that weren't able to make it, they also can see all the goodness. So I know Iffy, I saw you come in, just to plug him again in 2 weeks. He will be here chatting with me about his journey in his career to become a Scrum Master, as well as his amazing content that he puts out there on LinkedIn, inspiring us who are, making some big career moves, because sometimes we need that support. So thank you so much. Antoni, any final words before we sign off this evening?
Live every day on purpose. That's it.
Well, thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thank you for showing up to the community here. We enjoyed having you here, Antoni, and we look forward to next time with another Agile conversation.
Thank you so much, Patty, for having me. And for those of you who do want to reach out, you can reach me on LinkedIn anytime. I'm always there. So feel free to reach out. No stupid questions.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye. Hey, Sarah. Bye.